This original WSRE presentation is made possible by viewers like you. Thank you.
Florida Teacher of the Year, Cheryl Conley, on this edition of Conversations. While politicians, pundits, and academics argue about what's wrong in education and debate from on high how to fix the problems, Cheryl Conley, like many teachers across this nation, is on the ground where the real action is taking place, the classroom. Now think about this for a second. As a teacher, you have three groups to answer to: school administrators, parents, and ultimately the students. By any stretch, this is a delicate balancing act. Three diverse groups, each with different needs. No doubt, it takes a special skill set, a skill set that Cheryl Conley has mastered. The elementary education, middle school science teacher from Indian River County in Florida is a rock star in education. A peek into her classroom will reveal an atmosphere of creativity, energy, and passion. Ms. Conley, well, she's at the top of her game. She's the Florida Department of Education Macy's Teacher of the Year for 2011. Cheryl Conley, welcome to Conversations.
Thank you for having me, Jeff.
It's a pleasure. Why did you become a teacher?
You know, I never thought about being an educator. I was one of those students, top 10%, went to college. I knew I loved science, and I thought I would go into medicine. So I began studying biology and chemistry. And after my second year of college, I was a sophomore, poor college student, and I went back home to my small little Texas town, and I thought, I need to make a little money. How can I make some money? School was still in session, so I signed up to be a substitute teacher. I got a 2-week gig at a middle school in a science classroom, and I loved it. From the moment I walked in, I couldn't wait to see what each day was going to bring, and went back to school, changed my major, and the rest is history. Never regretted my decision, never.
What do you think it was about that atmosphere that just appealed to you?
I loved the age group. I loved the excitement that a good lesson would bring. I loved the discussions that went on in the classroom, but I think ultimately I enjoyed the connections. And I was only there for 2 weeks, but the connections that I made with the students in that class were really life-changing, obviously.
How do we as a society get more, and I use the word rock star, but how do we get more just high quality people into the field of education?
That, to me, is one of the biggest questions in education. There's so many other things that we're discussing and things that we're debating, but that is the real core of what we are trying to do, is recruit these high achievers, these deep thinkers, and the students that just have so much to offer, and let them see that education is really a viable career opportunity. You know, it is a way of making a difference. And I think that that's going to be one of the ways that we're able to do it, to touch on that humanity that they have and that sense of helping out the community. We need to nurture that and recognize the talents and the skills needed to be a good teacher, and recognize that early in our students and start saying, you know, you'd be a great educator, you'd be a phenomenal teacher. What about teaching history or things like that? And encouraging them to collaborate with one another and to teach each other through class is a great way of doing it, because then your really good teachers see it. Right. They feel it, and they know what it's like to work with one another and be a teacher.
You know, the money issue always comes up. People always say, well, there's not, how do we fix that problem?
Yeah, that's a big one. You know, the states and the countries that are ahead of us, ahead of the United States, you know, Singapore, Finland, those countries all pay their teachers higher standards, higher salaries, but they also have higher standards to get into education. So that's going to be something we're going to have to look at, is educator prep programs, maybe make it a little tougher to get in, and pay our teachers more. We've got to make education a priority, from parents at home to community leaders and community activists, all the way to politicians. And it needs to be less punitive and more prioritized.
Speaking of money and things changing in Florida, the Student Success Act was just recently signed into law, and that's going to kind of change things as far as tenure is concerned and how teachers are paid. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you know, that bill is very controversial.
Right.
There are things about it that personally I believe in that are really core and good and need to be changed. For example, the tenure issue. I am really okay with getting rid of last in, first out. Right. That does not keep the best teachers in the classroom. Right. And that needs to be everyone's priority, from teachers to teachers' unions to policymakers. That is without a doubt. And I see things differently than a lot of teachers because I moved here about 5 years ago. And I moved from Texas, where I was rated highly effective. But when the budget cuts started happening, I had only been teaching for 2 years. And so I was technically let go the year before being named State Teacher of the Year. Wow. My principal called me in and she was crying and she said, I am so sorry. You know, it's down to the last 2 hires, myself and another teacher. And because this teacher had transferred from in Florida, she was able to stay and got her tenure, as we call it, after 1 year of a good evaluation, where I needed 3 because I was from out of state. Wow. And the principal would have rather kept me on, but she couldn't. And so this really changes that. It addresses that somewhat. The really scary part about that bill is a lot of things are not answered in that bill. It's not fully funded. We don't know how we're going to cover the cost. We're saying we're going to give teachers merit pay, which research shows it really is not effective at getting higher test scores, which is what everyone seems to be after. But there's no money there. And so where is this pay going to come from? Not only that, the value-added model, we don't have one worked out. We're not exactly sure of the mathematics that are going to go into it. That's the part that's a little scary, I believe, for teachers. There is no teacher in the state of Florida that wants to be next door to an ineffective teacher. None of us. We all want to have effective teachers on our team, teaching our own children. You know, so bringing up our profession in the eyes of society is important to every single teacher, but the way that it's being done, I think a lot of people are worried about.
I guess your performance will be based on test scores.
Yes.
In Florida, I guess that would primarily be the FCAT.
Primarily.
How do teachers feel about that particular component of the bill?
Well, the way that they will evaluate is 50% test scores, 50% administrator evaluation. So your test scores for elementary teachers like myself would be FCAT, period. Your higher level teachers, you know, high school teachers will have AP exams that they can use, end of course exams and things like that. Teachers aren't a real big fan of FCAT. You know, I think as teachers need to really unite and keep saying over and over that there is learning that happens in a classroom that cannot be measured by a single multiple choice test. There are things that go on and there are things that are effective and that are important to the development of the child that you just cannot measure by choosing the right answer on a test.
And let me ask you this, am I right about this? Are some people really good test takers and maybe they really don't know the material that well, but they're good test takers?
Yes.
And then conversely, others are poor test takers but know the material?
Absolutely, absolutely. And many adults are that way. You know, that you put them on the spot and they can't come up with a really quick answer, but yet if you give them time to think about it, they're all right. Children are the same way. And so you have kids that don't prepare and they don't stress out and they show up and they take a test and they're fine. And then you have others that just do not perform. They have that testing anxiety. You know, being that I taught 4th grade, I focused a lot on writing because the 4th grade students take the writing portion of the FCAT. And I had one student that was a fabulous writer. I mean, he was phenomenal. He wanted to do so well for me, for himself, for his parents. He wanted to get a 6, which is the highest you can get on that test. The minute I said, you know, open your booklet and you may begin, he froze. He began shaking, put down his pencil, couldn't concentrate, didn't know what to do. I kind of just patted him on the back and said, you know, just take a minute, you know, calm down and you're going to be fine. Just do the best you can do. He couldn't do it. Finally, and it's a timed test, it's 45 minutes, and about 15 minutes had gone by, and he began to pick up his pencil, and a few times he would get a few words out, and finally he was able to get it out. He did not finish the test all the way, but he still received like a 4, and it's like, but that wasn't a clear picture of his ability. You know, that was a picture of his testing mindset at that moment and what they saw on the paper.
I just don't understand why the folks in politics and the people who are making this policy find that so difficult to understand. I mean, we've all experienced it ourselves.
Right.
I mean, and I don't want to put you on the spot from that standpoint, but do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I tell you, a big culprit in all of it is the No Child Left Behind Act. The No Child Left Behind, while it has good things about it, you know, it forced us to disaggregate our data and to look at every single child and make sure that no child is slipping between the cracks, you know, those proverbial cracks that every year we talk about. It forced us to look at all of the data and every single child. But what it also did is it created this testing mania that we have going on across the whole United States. It isn't only a Florida issue. It is truly a national epidemic. And I just try and encourage everybody to go back to what we know is good teaching, using innovation, using creativity, and using exploration. You know, those are the things that made our country great.
Right.
You know, inventors, you know, creators. That's what we want our children to be, free thinkers. And that's what makes America so different. You know, when our country's children go and compete internationally, or when the international teachers see, I'm going to get a chance to go to space camp with all the other international teachers of the year, as well as all the 50 state winners. They say every year the international teachers have trouble being creative, as do the international students. You know, the Japanese teachers are always saying, how do I teach creativity to my children?
Right.
Well, that's what Americans do naturally. And so we need to stop tying the hands of teachers and letting us let our children be creative.
Do you think our education system is too structured?
Sure, I think it's too structured, and it's taken a lot of decisions out of the hands of the teachers. You know, a lot of things are mandated, and I do something with my students that I've actually now taken into my role as Teacher of the Year. I build spaghetti towers with them.
Spaghetti towers.
With dried spaghetti noodles and marshmallows. And the job is you've got 15 minutes and you can build it. You have to build a tower as high as you can build it. So that's the challenge, right? Everybody gets building. I've built it with kindergartners. I've built them with 4th graders and 5th graders. I've built them with teachers, administrators, and even some parents. So then I started collecting data, you know, and what I find is no adult group. Teachers come close, but no adult group can even beat the kindergarteners.
Really?
And no one can beat my 4th graders who built a tower that was actually taller than they were. And so why? That got me thinking, what's going on? What are the complexities that are going on in these groups that I'm missing? So I started watching and seeing what was going on, and I find that adults sometimes have trouble when they've built something, they've put their heart into it, and when it's wobbling or wanting to fall, as adults, we try to save it. We pile more on and we build something here and we try and save it over there. Where kids don't do that. They take it, and even if I've said, you've got a 3-minute warning, you know, it's over in 3 minutes, they will trash everything they have and start from scratch.
They're not afraid of failure.
They're not afraid. And they're able to say, you know what, let's get rid of this. They're not personally invested. And they say, get rid of it, let's try it again. And maybe that's what we need to do with education. Quit piling all this stuff on and start over, or take some things off that we know aren't working.
Yeah, because and the world has changed a lot. How has technology changed education since you've been teaching?
You know what? That is the biggest question of the whole day. It has transformed the classrooms. And what we have to do as educators is understand that and accept that. It's very important that as educators, we admit that our learners today are not even the learners that I was when I was a child. They are digital learners. They literally are texting with one hand while they're surfing the net with the other. And I have seen that firsthand in my own children. My son's only 10, and I've seen him doing the same thing. We have to accept iPods in the classrooms, smartphones in the classrooms. We have to accept iPads and let that be worked into our lessons, because that's how they learn. And everywhere I go, I try and tell the public that our children are not going to be measured by their ability to recall information. That is over and done. They are going to be measured by their ability to find information, to analyze that information, to build upon that information, and to share it with each other. That's what being intelligent is going to mean in the 21st century. And so as teachers, we have to accept that, and we need to train them. Where do you go to find good information on the internet? What are good acceptable sites? What are poor sites? How do you double check your info and make sure that it's correct and analyze it? You know, I always relate it to phone numbers. You know, think of how many phone numbers you had memorized when you were a child. You know, probably yours, your grandmother's, your aunts, your uncles, your best friends. How many do you have memorized now?
Very few. Very
few, if even your own, right? Everything is in our smartphones. And we've got to accept that that has really changed. And that's our children. That's their reality.
People learn differently too. Right?
Sure.
Because I mean, some people can read something and they comprehend it. You know, for me personally, if I talk to someone, I tend to pick it up better. Expand on that and your experiences in the classroom.
So you're probably an auditory learner, right? There's different things. There's people that are visual learners, and they can tend to see something. They want to draw a map. If you're giving them directions, can you draw me a map? They're visual learners. There are people who are auditory like you, which typically do the best in school, because school historically has been very teacher-directed and teacher-centered and very auditory because of that. You've got one sage on the stage, as they say, standing and sending information out to the students. But what we found is most adults and a major majority of children are actually tactile learners and kinesthetic learners. They need to learn by touching and moving and doing. They need to get up and run around. When you're learning about protons, neutrons, and electrons, they need to stand up and be a proton and an electron and repel from each other, or attract, to one another and repel if they're protons. And they need to play that game, that tug of war that's so important. And we need to do that in our classrooms.
And we're not doing enough of that, I take it.
No, and a lot of times it gets back to that test-taking thing. We really center so much of our education on how to read a multiple choice test, how to underline facts, how to find key main ideas and things like that, which are all good skills.
Right.
But there's more to an education than that.
It's not the end-all, be-all.
Absolutely not.
If I walk into a Cheryl Conley classroom, what am I going to find?
No day will ever be the same. And my saying is, if I make it to the dinner table at home that night, if the kids go home and say, "You'll never believe what Miss Conley did today," then it was a good day. Some days I wear a sombrero, Cinco de Mayo. Some days I'm dressed as a pirate when we're learning about Florida pirates, or a Seminole girl, or Albert Einstein. For every Halloween, I'm Albert Einstein, and we learn about chemistry and have activities. When we do our Florida studies, my class designed a pirate ship, and my husband and I built the pirate ship and brought it into the class. And so now it's our little reading area, and they designed it. And you talk about math, that's learning some real important skills, drawing a schematic. Every year we design lighthouses, and we study Florida lighthouses, and they choose one, and they learn, when we're learning electricity, how to draw an electrical schematic. And we wire our own lighthouses and build them out of shoeboxes, and they actually have a light switch off and on, and learning's got to be fun. And I'm one of those people, I get bored easy. And if I'm bored as a teacher, I can guarantee you 21 out of 22 of my kids are bored. And I don't want that. I don't want anyone to ever say, Miss Conley was boring.
One of the things that a lot of business people will tell you is that we in this country need to focus more on math and science, and that's your wheelhouse.
You bet.
And one of the areas that I have noticed, and I have a daughter who I'm extremely proud of, who's doing great in math and science, but for some reason sometimes girls seem to get pushed out at a certain age. Why is that?
I'm so glad you asked me about that. STEM education, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, is very, very important right now. And that goes along with that innovation. And when the president talks about out-innovating and out-creating the other countries, we've got to promote those subjects with our students. But we really have got to key in on 3 particular groups. First of all, being girls. Second of all, minority students. And third, students with special needs. Because those populations are underrepresented in the science and technology fields, the mathematic fields. Why does that happen? You know, I don't know. I think there's a lot of things that play into it, and I think it all boils down to elementary science. Elementary teachers are so focused on math and reading that a lot of times science and social studies gets the back door.
Right.
And for some reason, girls start to think they're not good at it,
Right.
or they only see men scientists in the textbooks,
Right.
and they only see men astronauts, which a lot of that is changing.
Right.
But it's not changing fast enough. And so we as educators need to do our best to promote science among the girls and the minorities and the special needs students.
And at the same time, bring that American creativity in with those technical skills, right?
Most definitely, most definitely.
And it's absolutely fascinating. You know what I find kind of interesting too, I guess more women are graduating college these days than men, if I'm not mistaken. And I also find it fascinating that more and more women are starting to run major companies.
Right.
You know, and so that are technical companies too, not just your, you know, a perfume company or something along those lines.
Sure, that's very interesting.
Yeah. Let me switch gears on you here for a second, because we've been extremely positive and I want to keep the tone of it there. But one of the things that I know you've talked about and that has been an issue in this country is this whole bullying scenario. Tell me more.
Well, bullying is very, very important. And as a fourth grade teacher, you know, research shows bullying is in its heights between fourth and eighth grade. And a lot of people say it actually hits its height in fourth grade. And I have a fourth grader of my own. And so, you know, bullying is close, near and dear to my heart. And it goes along with that character education, things you can't measure on the test, you know. We have to shape our youngsters and understand that they're going to be leading our community, and that character education is so important. We need to empower them. I think that's going to be the key to getting rid of bullying, is to empower those children and let them know you have the power to walk away, or you have the power to say, you know what, he's my friend and you need to leave him alone if they see bullying going on, or to band together and go to an adult and tell them what's happening. To empower children, I think, is really going to be at the root of saving a lot of things that are wrong with the educational system.
What about the child who is the bully? What's going on in that situation?
You know, a lot of times what the research says is they are the most insecure of all. And there's a little conflict of, do you have peer, you know, resolutions, or do you not? And how exactly do you deal with it? I think the most important thing is to work out a system in your school, in your county, and in your community that just bullying is not accepted. It's not acceptable, and it's not going to be tolerated. And do everything that you can and have that open dialogue and that connection with your students and with your children, parents and children, that they can come to you.
Now, I know one of the challenges that educators face on top of everything else is a lot of folks say, well, this or that falls in line with the parents. The parents should be doing this at home. The parents should be doing that at home. But in the real world, let's face it, unfortunately, there are many children out there who do not come from a great parental environment.
Right.
How do you as a teacher deal with that?
You know, everyone knows that children that come from families that put education as a priority are going to do better in school. And we all want parents to be active and involved in their children's education. But this is public education, and that's just not the fact. And why does it happen? For different reasons. Some parents have had bad experiences in school. Some are working 2 or 3 jobs now in this economy to make ends meet. Some are sick and can't be there. Some have just so many things going on that for whatever reason they can't attend that parent-teacher conference or whatever it may be. And we, like it or not, we take all kids into public education. And that's what's so great about our country. The fact that we know that every child has value and every child matters. And we know that public education, regardless of what's going on, is single-handedly the most important avenue to success for any child in our country.
As you've traveled around in your role as Teacher of the Year,
sir.
what has surprised you the most, good and bad?
Oh, that's really great. You know what? I have to tell you, I have seen very, very few teachers that I thought, oh, wow. Overwhelmingly, I am shocked, proud of what I am seeing. the love, the caring, the comfort, the energy in the classrooms, the activities that I see going on. I see real progress being made. I see a cohesion with teachers in their buildings. And what I'd really like to see a little more of is more cohesion between counties. I'd like to see a little more collaboration and sharing of resources and sharing of ideas. Because one county, there are those pockets of excellence, and we need to find those areas and tap in to what makes them so fabulous and share what's going on. One-size education does not fit all.
Right.
But there are areas...
Best practices.
Absolutely. There are areas that good teaching is good teaching. And if I'm in West Palm and I'm in an urban setting, then typically an urban Orlando school, something that works there is going to work for me.
Right.
So we need to share those ideas and collaborate with one another. I think that would be so phenomenal.
I'll let you give me a kind of a short answer on this one, but I'm fresh out of college. I'm a brand new teacher. Your advice?
First of all, breathe. Just breathe. It's going to be fine. And you know what? Go in there, make that classroom your own, and don't be afraid to be different or to shine, and enjoy it. And know that you're making a difference. No matter how hard it gets, you're making a difference.
What can I as a parent do to make your job easier?
First of all, read with your children. Read with them from the time they are born. Don't ever stop. Early education is very, very important. Getting them into a good pre-kindergarten class and a program. Once they're into public school, support your teachers. Volunteer at the schools. Get to know your teachers. Get to know your administrators. And be there to just lend me a hand. If you walk your kids to the door, when I open up the door and I give your kid a hug in the morning and say, come on in. Say, hey, Miss Conley, I'm here. Do you need anything? Or thanks for what you're doing. Just a simple thank you goes a really long way.
As we move forward, what's in store for Cheryl Conley?
I don't know. In 3 weeks, I'm heading to Washington. I get to actually go inside the White House and meet the President of the United States and hopefully the First Lady. And then I get to sit in the Rose Garden when he makes the announcement of the National Teacher of the Year. And after that, I have a few things. I get to go to space camp, like I said. And there's a few national finalist things that for sure I get to do, and conferences. And I'm sure I'm just going to hopefully keep traveling and keep learning, because teachers never stop learning.
You are a real pleasure to visit with.
Oh,
thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
You are so welcome. I wish you the best of luck, and congratulations on being Florida's Teacher of the Year.
Thank you.
Cheryl Conley, she's one of the ones that's down on the ground floor. She's making a difference where it really counts, and that's in the classroom. Wish her all the best. And who knows, she might be the National Teacher of the Year, not just for Florida, but perhaps for the nation. We wish her all the best. As for us, well, you can use some of that high-speed technology out there on the internet and find us on Facebook. Just search out Conversations with Jeff Weeks. I certainly hope you enjoyed the broadcast. Thank you for watching. I'm Jeff Weeks. Take care.
Support for this program is provided in part by these corporate sponsors. And by viewers like you.